The moment the throttle stayed pinned past 300 kilometers per hour, you could already see it wasn't going to last. The surge was there. And then suddenly, it wasn't. The acceleration faded almost 300 meters before the braking zone, not because the driver lifted, but because the car had nothing left to give. At Suzuka, that wasn't an isolated issue. It was a pattern. A machine that should have been attacking every straight was instead defending halfway through it. And in modern Formula 1, that is not a weakness you can disguise. If you want more deep dive analysis like this, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss what really happens beneath the surface of Formula 1. Ferrari didn't leave Japan with questions about setup or execution. They left with something far more serious. Because when a car stops behaving the way it was designed to, the real question is not how you fix it. It's whether you even understand it anymore. Suzuka did not expose Ferrari, it redefined them. On the surface, the result looked like another difficult race in a long season. The lap times were off, the gap to the front was uncomfortable, and the rhythm never quite settled. But when you step beyond the timing screens and into the behavior of the car itself, the picture changes completely. This was not a case of missing a setup window by a few tenths. It was not about tire degradation or track evolution. The SF26 was fundamentally out of sync with itself. Through the high-speed sections where confidence is everything, the car hesitated. Not visibly, not dramatically, but just enough. The kind of hesitation that forces a driver to react instead of commit. And at a circuit like Suzuka, where every corner builds into the next, that hesitation compounds. The balance shifts were inconsistent. Grip did not build progressively. Instead of loading the tires predictably, the platform felt disconnected. The front would respond one way on entry, the rear another on exit. And when that happens, the driver stops attacking the lap and starts managing it. That alone is damaging. But what made Suzuka critical was how early it revealed itself. From the opening laps, the pattern was there. By the middle of the race, it was undeniable. And by the end, it was no longer something Ferrari could explain away. Because this wasn't just about performance loss, it was about control. When a car behaves unpredictably, every decision becomes reactive. Strategy becomes limited, setup adjustments become guesses. And most importantly, the driver loses the ability to extract the last fraction of performance, not because it isn't there, but because it cannot be trusted. And that is the moment everything shifts. Not when you realize you are slower, but when you realize you cannot access what you have. Ferrari didn't leave Suzuka thinking about upgrades. They left questioning the foundation of the car itself, but that wasn't the real story. The most revealing part of Suzuka was not what you could see, it was what the data refused to hide. Lap after lap, the same pattern repeated. Full deployment on the straight, followed by an early collapse. Not at the braking point, not even close to it, but roughly 300 meters before it. In a sport where every meter of acceleration matters, that number is not just significant, it is catastrophic. 300 meters of lost electrical assistance means 300 meters of vulnerability. It means every rival behind enters the slipstream at the exact moment Ferrari loses its advantage. And once that happens, the entire defensive structure collapses. But the number itself is only the surface. Because the reason behind it tells a far more serious story. The MGU-K, which should be delivering performance, was instead being used to compensate. A significant portion of its energy was not pushing the car forward, but fighting resistance. Aerodynamic resistance. That changes everything. Instead of energy being deployed strategically across the lap, it was being consumed just to maintain baseline performance. And when that happens, the system reaches its limit earlier than it should. Not because the energy isn't there, but because it has already been spent inefficiently. This is where the concept of clipping becomes critical. At Suzuka, clipping wasn't occurring at the edge of the straight, it was happening in the middle of it. That means the usable power window was effectively shortened, not by design, but by necessity. And in modern Formula 1, where energy deployment defines overtaking potential, that is not a marginal loss. It is structural. Even the top speed figures, which might appear competitive in isolation, become misleading. Because what matters is not peak speed but sustained acceleration. And Ferrari did not have it. Every straight became a countdown. Every deployment phase a compromise. And when you connect that 300-meter deficit with the broader aerodynamic inefficiency, a pattern emerges. The car was not just slow, it was wasting performance at a rate it could not sustain. What Suzuka exposed was not just a flaw, it was a mismatch in philosophy. Ferrari's original concept was built around control, stability, predictability. A car that behaves within defined limits, even if it sacrifices peak performance to achieve it. On paper, that approach makes sense. In a long season, consistency is often more valuable than aggression. But Formula One does not reward balance alone. It rewards efficiency. And this is where the contrast becomes clear. The SF26 generates downforce. There is no question about that. The grip is there, the platform has potential, and through certain phases of the corner, the car can match expectations. But the cost of that downforce is too high. Every unit of grip comes with a drag penalty that the car cannot afford. And in a sport where straight-line efficiency is as important as cornering speed, that trade-off becomes critical. Other teams have found ways to balance this equation, to generate downforce without paying an excessive aerodynamic price. Ferrari, at least at Suzuka, had not, and that creates a philosophical conflict. Do you continue refining a concept that is fundamentally imbalanced, or do you accept that the direction itself needs to change? Suzuka forced Ferrari into the second option, because when the MGUK is being used to fight drag instead of enhance performance, the issue is no longer about fine-tuning, it is about alignment. Alignment between aerodynamics and energy deployment, between mechanical grip and aerodynamic efficiency, between what the car is designed to do and what it is actually doing on track. And without that alignment, every improvement becomes limited. You can adjust the setup, you can optimize the strategy, you can even improve individual components. But the underlying inefficiency remains. This is why Ferrari's response is not incremental. It is structural, not because they want to take risks, but because the current concept leaves them no alternative. For a driver, the difference between a fast car and a usable car is everything. At Suzuka, the SF26 may have had moments of performance, but it lacked something far more important: trust. And when that trust disappears, even the most experienced driver is forced into compromise. Lewis Hamilton's driving style is built on precision, late braking, sharp rotation, and the ability to commit early on throttle. It relies on a car that responds exactly as expected, lap after lap, corner after corner. But the SF26 was asking him to do something different. Instead of attacking, he was reacting. Instead of committing, he was adjusting. Through high-speed corners where confidence is measured in milliseconds, the car introduced hesitation. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to change the approach. And that hesitation carries a cost. It affects entry speed. It delays throttle application, it disrupts rhythm, and over a lap, those small losses accumulate into something significant. But beyond the lap time, there is a deeper impact. When a driver cannot rely on the car, the entire feedback loop changes. The communication becomes less about extracting performance and more about managing limitations. That is not where a championship-level driver operates best, and this is where Hamilton's role becomes critical. Because he is not just adapting to the car, he is influencing its evolution. His input is not limited to setup adjustments or minor refinements. It extends to the philosophy of the car itself. How it should behave, how it should respond, how it should feel at the limit. That introduces a human element into a process that has often been dominated by simulation and data. And when that shift happens, the development direction changes. Not just toward speed, but toward usability. Inside the paddock, timing is everything, and Ferrari's timing has forced attention. The original development plan was structured. Incremental updates in Miami, followed by a major package later in the season. A controlled progression designed to build performance step by step. Suzuka disrupted that entirely. What was meant to be a measured evolution has become an accelerated response. Components that were scheduled weeks later are now being pushed forward in less than 2 weeks. That kind of compression is not just technical, it is political, because it signals urgency. When a team abandons its planned timeline, it reveals something about its internal assessment, not publicly, not directly, but through action. And in Ferrari's case, that message is clear. The current concept is not delivering. This is not about chasing marginal gains, it is about correcting direction, and within the competitive landscape, that carries consequences. Rival teams are not standing still, development continues, performance improves, and the benchmark moves forward, which means Ferrari is not just trying to close a gap. They are trying to change trajectory while the target accelerates away. That is one of the most difficult challenges in Formula One, because it requires not only technical execution, but organizational alignment. Every department working under pressure, every decision carrying increased weight, every risk amplified by time constraints. And yet, this is the position Ferrari now finds itself in. Not refining, not optimizing, resetting.